I'm a little upset tonight. I woke up this morning refreshed, and that's really my best time when my mind is not sluggish. I don't really like creating late at night. I'm not just talking, not at my best. But I worked really hard this morning. I had some content ready and filmed. Everything came out well. I was doing some editing, and I worked really hard and lost it all. Unable to use it. I tried all day to get it to upload correctly, and there were some glitches going on with my phone, and so I learned my lesson on that. Yeah, it's time consuming, when you really want to be serious about your work and your channel. And I've been wanting to do this for a very long time. I've been planning to do it for a very long time. But it's a lot different than just jumping on social media whenever I'm in the mood and I have an energy. That's what I'm used to doing. Just an impromptu hello. And this is a little different. But I'm learning as I go. And so it's going to be cool. I just have to take it one day at a time. And that's life. That's how we learn. Trial and error. And don't get defeated by it. Boy, it tried to get me today, though. It had me down. It had me depressed, y'all. So thank you for joining me and checking out the channel. As I said before, I am going to have a variety of topics going on. If you haven't checked out my intro to my channel, part 1 and 2, what is dysfunctionally functional? What's it mean to me? What am I about? Who am I? Where have I been? What's all this about for me? You might want to check those out. And please like and subscribe. Leave me some thoughts, what you're thinking about things. That would be cool. Anyway, okay, tonight's video, I'm going to try to keep this as concise as possible because I have so much, okay? I have so much I want to talk to you guys about, discuss, bring some awareness to things that are really important to me. And this particular case is one of them. It's a murder case that I ran upon last year. It happened in 2018. I didn't know about it then. This video is basically going to be an intro to this case and to some of the dynamics of the case that I want to talk about. And I'm going to do a series on this case. So this video is probably going to be just the intro to that to get us started, okay? And it's such a multi-layered case. There's so much involved in it. So much backstory on the people involved. So much was going on. Important issues that, the way I see it, things that are important for people to talk about, spread awareness about. And not only that, but keep the memory of that woman and her children alive. Keep their light going. Keep them, because they don't have a voice anymore. And so, yeah, I feel that on a very deep level. Okay. So, the long and short of it, Chris and Shannan Watts were married in 2012. We will get into more details about who they are, how they met, different things later on. So stay with me. But they married in 2012. They were married about 8 years. They had 2 daughters, 3 and 4 years old, Celeste and Bella. And in 2018, in June, I believe it was, Shannan discovered she was pregnant with their 3rd child. A boy this time. And August 13th of 2018, when she was 15 weeks pregnant, Chris Watts decides to murder his pregnant wife and his 2 baby daughters and then dispose of them like they are absolute garbage. Yes, this is one of the most highly publicized cases I've ever heard of. And when it did come into my life last year, by accident, on YouTube, I'm not the same person anymore. After studying this case intently since then, I haven't been able to let it go. I've learned a lot from it. It's given me a lot of insight into a lot of different things. I know there's a lot of other people out there that feel that way. This case has an obsessive following. And believe it or not, there's even people that support Chris Watts. There are people that support the murderer. There's always those people, though, right? And they take a big shit all over anyone that feels emotional about that woman and 2 girls. Please. Whew. Anyway. And I just want to say this. That's part of what my channel's about. Dysfunctionally functional. Balance. And personally, I know there are those really hardcore people out there that are fact-based, science-based, critical thinking only, objective thinking only, leave your emotions out of it, you know, just true crime or whatever. They're just really hardcore like that, and that's great. That's cool if that's how they want to be. But when they start taking a crap all over anyone who uses other senses as well, and they start writing those people off as dummies simply because they're not as limited, just 2. Okay, now I'm not talking about that imbalance of the people that are only emotional. All they do is just go to pieces and start spewing opinion emotionally based on something, whatever. No, I'm not talking about those people because that's very limited as well. That's not the best, most well-balanced, accurate perspective they could really have because they're limiting it to one side or the other. They are strictly either fact-based, science, hardcore. They don't allow any other feelings or senses or emotional, you know, something they had experienced, anything. They don't allow anything else like that. Or the people on the other side that are just too emotional. They're not even looking at facts, evidence, critical thinking. They're just going to pieces, just completely emotional, spouting off a bunch of random, ignorant crap. Blah, 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 because I'm so emotional. No, no, no. I personally need the balance of both, and that's how I operate. I need to take in the facts, the evidence. I need to remove my emotions and my biases, which I do. And I need to think objectively, think critically, and put myself in that mind frame to take all of that in first and process that. But then I also have to rely on other senses, okay? I have to rely on deeper instinct, deeper wisdom, experience from my past, my frame of reference, what I've been through, what I've seen, what I've heard before, patterns I've seen or studied, my own deeper intuition, my gut. And don't piss on that because your gut is like your second brain. Look it up. That inner knowing, and reading energy. Really tuning into certain things and picking up on them empathically. And so I have to rely on both. All of my senses and my extra senses that we all have. We have them for a damn reason. So I don't know why people piss all over that. I don't know why. Because at some point in your life, you might need to rely on those to keep your ass alive. So that's what they're there for. So I have to have a balance of both. And that's how I operate. That's what I do. And so, back to the Watts case. I told you guys when it happened and kind of who they were. 2 very different people came together. They married when they were young. He 24, she 25. And there's just so much to it. But if you Google it or you research this, it is a fact that men mature much later than women. And this is no bashing to men. This is none of that here on my channel. I'm strictly here for education, like I said, education purposes, self-help, spreading of awareness and knowledge, and entertainment purposes. That's it. Not a professional, just, and I'm not here to bash anyone or make anyone feel bad. But, if that happens along the way, sometimes shit happens, That's how we learn and grow. But yeah, I did read that. My partner and I were in a discussion, 6-8 months, a year ago, about men and women and their maturity levels. And we looked it up. We were in this conversation about it, and it was so true. It was so funny that a lot of times, now this doesn't go for every man, but a lot of times, statistically, women mature faster. And I believe it said 43 was when a man really fully matures. And I'm guessing they're talking about emotional intelligence, maybe. Because there's a lot of dudes that, 18, 19, 20 years old, they got it going on. They're going to work every day. They got a house or an apartment. They got a vehicle. They're taking care of business, yada, yada, yada. But I believe what they're referring to is emotional maturity. Sometimes it takes men longer to sort of give up some of their younger teenage thinking and younger teenage ways and desires or whatever. I don't know. Especially if they come from a traumatic past. A lot of people get stuck there and they just don't emotionally mature beyond that. And it can cause a lot of problems. But yeah, just a little tidbit there. So they married young, and, I don't know what went on exactly in Chris's past. Clearly something did. But I don't feel that he was emotionally mature enough for that marriage, or as Shannan was. And that was off the bat a problem. And so what I'm most interested in right now is, for a lot of personal reasons, talking about how our childhood, our unmet needs from childhood, all of that baggage comes into our adult relationships with us, particularly those very early relationships, straight out of mom's house into a relationship, particularly those. And it happens to more people than you think. Not just people who came from abusive, traumatic, neglectful, shaming, emotionally abusive. Not just people who came from trauma and abuse. It happens to a lot of people. Something in their childhood, and they bring these issues. If there's no intervention, no therapy, no guidance, and something goes on in the childhood, a lot of people bring this shit into their relationships subconsciously, and they don't even know it, and it can cause hell. But specifically people who have been abused, physically, sexually, emotionally, psychologically, either abused, beaten, or neglected, abandoned, psychologically screwed around, manipulated, put in a certain role as a child where the parent acted more like a child and the child had to be more grown up. So many different things are abusive to a child and damaging to them that people really don't think about or even realize. It's so subtle. It doesn't have to just be beatings or neglect or sexual abuse, or those are obviously dangerous, damaging. But there are so many other things that can happen to people in childhood that screws with their head and stays with them forever. And they bring it into their marriage, their relationships, okay? Especially from traumatic backgrounds, without any, if they go along without any therapy, counseling, or help along the way. And it can cause absolute destruction. It's just, oh. And it's so important to me because I'm one of those kids. I did grow up in trauma. I grew up in a very abusive home. My father was an alcoholic narcissist. He was physically, verbally, emotionally, psychologically, and sexually abusive to me. I endured all of that. And right off the bat, everything I just named, that's hell. Right off the bat, a kid's got about 800 issues. Yeah. And so, luckily, I started running away at a very young age. Luckily, though, I had intervention. And I'll tell some of my story one day. But luckily, I had intervention. I had people coming after me. I had therapists. I got ordered to go into treatment and behavioral institutions, and I was always getting exposed to that, even if I didn't want it back then, and even if I fought it, because I did. But luckily, I had that, because as the years went on, I really grew to appreciate it, and I really grew to want more of it and study on my own and really work through what had happened to me. And thank God, because I don't know where I would have ended up. I don't know. I don't know how I would have survived after what I went through. But, so there's a lot of personal reasons and a lot of things I can see in this case. I believe that both Chris and Shannan Watts definitely had some type of abandonment and attachment issues, something related to childhood. Now, neither of them had a particularly overtly abusive, beating, molesting, neglected. Neither one of them had what I would consider a particularly traumatic childhood. Okay? But something in both of their childhoods affected them deeply. Okay? And after studying the case, we can see that. And we can pick up on what those things are. Both of them had a very deep-rooted need to please. The need to please, a people pleaser, okay? But it manifested in both of them in different ways. And we all know that people pleasing is very toxic. People pleasing goes so far beyond even your own conscious will. You just keep doing it anyway because you're so desperate to please this person. Not even realizing that this is a subconscious pattern. This is tied to something else deep in your past, deep in your childhood. And many of us have been stuck there before and had to learn to work our way out of it and see that pattern for what it was. Both of them had a desperate need to please. And in Chris's own words, from the book that was written by Sherilyn Cadle, Letters from Christopher, while he's been in prison. He talked about how he just wanted to please her, and he couldn't ever tell her no, and he wanted to speak up to her sometimes, and he tried, but it just didn't work out for him. And he always somehow felt she was just more accomplished and smarter, and so we hear this in him, that he felt inferior to her. That his desperate need to please went so far that he hated himself for it. That he started to feel like a fucking worm. Like an inferior little bitch boy. Just saying. That's what he started to feel like. And he blamed her for that feeling. Because his attachment to this idea, this need to please her and look like the good guy, always, right off the bat, that indicates covert narcissism to me. So he had that going on, and it went so far because it's deeply rooted in another trauma somewhere. Somewhere, somehow, I don't know, deep in his childhood, someone either shamed him or made him feel like he wasn't quite good enough at something, or he had some desperate need for approval somewhere that he did not get. It's always rooted in childhood somewhere. And so that was his thing. That was going on inside of him, and he was hating himself more and more because he just couldn't tell her no. And he felt controlled by her. But that's not her fault. But yet he was blaming her and brewing inside and stewing and storing this, resenting his own wife for his emotional failures. It was his job to not be ashamed of what he was feeling and push on through that. Like a man. Go on and push through it. Speak up. Say you need some help. Get to the root. Let's do something about that. Instead, no. He kept letting it fester. So he began to feel less and less of a man around her after 8 years. Couldn't tell her no. So desperately wanted to please everybody and please her. And covert narcissists do. They have this desperate need to always look like the good person. Do I look good? Am I good? It's like they're trying to convince themselves. They are, because they never hear that in their head. All day long it's beating down on them about how worthless they are, how inferior they are, how not good enough they are. It's beating down on them. So they have to overcompensate for it, But anyway, we'll get into that later. So he had that going on. And Shannan had the same thing, but in a different way. Okay? And just for the record, I will discuss this case, bits and pieces of it, what I feel, certain things that are important, in a critical thinking and an objective way. I will discuss different parts of these people, but in no way, shape, or form am I on his side at all. Do I excuse, condone? None of it. None of it. I don't support him in the slightest. So I just need to get that on out there, and I don't really care what anyone says or thinks about that. I'm not gonna, if you can go that far to do what you did to that woman who loved you, you can be that fucking selfish, and your baby daughters. I have absolutely no pity or sympathy at all for, I don't care what happened to him in his childhood at that point. After you did what you did? No. The only reason that I'm examining his backstory is for educational and learning purposes. Not because I feel any type of pity or sympathy for that man. No. Once he was grown, it was his job. his responsibility to take a look at himself, work on his emotional intelligence, talk to someone about his fears, his insecurities, build up his own confidence, seek a therapist, a counselor, talk to his dad, talk to his wife, talk to somebody. It was his job, not hers. Not hers, okay? And so he had that whole thing going on. And that's just, we're barely skimming the surface here. But people, we need to be aware of how bad people pleasing is. And so many people out there are just kind of ignorant to that. They think it's so mean if you stand up for yourself. So mean if you have boundaries. And you know what the hell you want and what you don't want. And you speak up on that. I can't stress the importance of it enough. Speak up. Now, compromising in a relationship, there's going to be a certain well-balanced, healthy amount of contributing love, attention, affection, time, and energy. There's going to be a healthy, well-balanced amount that you need to contribute if you're in a devoted relationship. And the two of you will need to find what your particular balance is as a couple. And not just what your balance is, but what's healthy. What's the healthy amount? That's the way I see that. But as far as that overboard attachment to pleasing, where you can't ever tell your partner no, you can't ever speak up about your feelings, you're always on guard wanting to please them, and you feel like you have to jump up their tail every second, and you can't really, that's going to end up stripping your self-respect down to nothing. And that's what began to happen to Chris Watts. Except his issues started way before that. I believe they had been brewing for years. And people pleasing is no. It is a no, no, no. And people need to understand what it is. When somebody says that, they're not saying be a dick. They're not saying go around being unkind. They're not saying don't contribute to your relationship. Don't be thoughtful. Don't be cool. No, that's not what it means. People pleasing is a toxic thing, period. Don't do it. Now, let's look at Shannan real quick before I have to clip this. And we'll come back in a part 2. Shannan had the same kind of thing going on. Something inside of her was also experiencing some type of abandonment, attachment type of issue. And she also had a strong need to please. But hers came in a different way. She didn't necessarily seek to please others. She sought to take it out in the form of work, 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 achieve, accomplish, build myself up, do all these great things, and we'll get into her later, all these different things that she did and her hobbies and her passions and her work and she just really rounded all the bases and, but that is inside of her. When I found out her father was an alcoholic, boom, there it is right there. And that she, at certain times, wanted attention that she couldn't get from him. Okay? There it is right there. We carry that stuff into our adult life, and it manifests differently in different people. But she took hers out differently. Apparently, she had something going on that made her the driven, high-geared, determined person that she was. And she did have anxiety. I believe she had an anxiety disorder. She had OCD. All of that comes with that territory. Alcoholic father, which from what I know, she had a loving family, good relationship with her family, a good upbringing. But there was apparently alcoholism in the father, and, so even if there wasn't a high level of abuse or neglect or anything like that, automatically when you have an alcoholic parent, you are going to develop abandonment issues because you're growing up around someone who's not an adult. They are childish. They are checked out. They are drunk. They are making you have to take care of them. Anyone who's grown up around alcoholics or has lived around knows what I'm talking about. You don't feel very safe. You don't feel like there's even an adult around. Where's the parent at? And when you grow up like that, you don't really think about it till you're a lot older. Very, very damaging. And it leaves you with a sense of, I never got to be a kid. I have to be responsible. I have to look out. I have to be driven. I have to make everything okay. That is how hers manifested, okay? And came out in that marriage. If I can just do enough. If I can just work hard enough. If I can just make everything perfect, he will love me. And it's deeply tied to her childhood. And clearly something in her husband triggered it. Something he might have been aloof or distant about, or maybe she picked up on an emotional remoteness because he did have that. And maybe she didn't really feel connected to all the way. And it triggered that old shit of childhood wanting her father's attention. And hers manifested in, I've got to work, I've got to succeed, I've got to make everything beautiful, I've got to be the best woman I can be, I have to do all of these things. Okay, they both had those types of fucking issues. And it is so crucial that people be aware of this and get into therapy about it. Someone had to tell me years ago, I didn't realize my own patterns. I didn't realize what I was doing in relationships. My therapist really had to work with me deeply on this stuff. And I've been working on issues like that for a lot of months. And so, what's sad, what really kills me about that case is, I'm not saying that Shannan was perfect angel or free of issue. Of course not. We're all human. We do shit. She didn't deserve to die. She did not deserve what she got. Those babies didn't deserve what they got. I don't care. And what's so sad to me is this all could have been prevented.